Alright guys, so let me show you the space. And there's Sonder. He'll be taking over from here. Alright guys, so we are on the property and I'm really excited to show you what we have. This place is massive, so we're not going to be able to show everything today, but I want you to envision this property as if it were in zones, and we're in kind of the upper lawn zone. There's going to be a forest zone, and there's also a lower meadow zone, which I hope to take you through. But what's interesting about this property is that this was owned by a horticulturist who went to Cornell University, and he owned a garden center here. So I will be showing you some really interesting varieties, sometimes varieties that I wouldn't necessarily pick myself, but, and it's because they're like a little bit more exotic. They're from China, they're from Japan. To the left here, it doesn't look like much because we're in the autumn, but this is one of those like variegated willow trees with like curly leaves. Wouldn't be my first choice of a plant here, but it's interesting nonetheless. And then you have this massive miscanthus grass, which I don't even know this. People usually don't plant this in the landscape very much anymore because it could overtake a landscape, as you could see. So this will need to be cut back. And you'll also notice over here, they're a little bare, but some blue spruce. There's lots of blue spruce here. And I love blue spruce because they're like really beautiful, the color, the tonality of the leaves, but they're looking a little sparse. And we had Barb over here from the Cornell Cooperative Extension, and she had mentioned that spruce are undergoing a lot of diseases, specifically more fungal diseases, like some needle cast disease, and it's just losing their leaves. And you know, these won't come back. So we're either gonna have to cut this back or cut the entire tree down. Barb recommended actually cutting all the blue spruce down, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of blue spruce on this land.
Right, because
Soil
why
samples.
is it not doing so well here?
Well, it's getting fungal diseases, and these plants are typically more in drier climates. So, you know, here in New York, we're humid in the summer. It's been humid, it's been wet for pretty much almost the entire year except this past summer. And it just doesn't do well with that. It doesn't like wet feet. And this, as we found out, we were taking just initial soil samples, and we found out that the ground here is silty loam, but is not well drained. And so that's what we're gonna be working with here.
Yeah,
now,
and after a good wind and rainstorm, there's a lot of puddles and water that doesn't really want to drain.
Yeah, exactly, which is great for like if you have vernal pools for like frogs and things like that, and aquatic insects, but not so great if you're a dry loving plant.
Like the spruce.
So, and then this is an oak tree, but not native. I'm not even sure what kind of variety this is or species, but it definitely has kept its leaves, and it probably will keep its leaves through much of winter, I'd imagine. It just started to turn yellow. There's some damage from some sapsuckers. Let me see if I could find the damage. And up over here too. All these little holes are probably from sapsuckers, which is a type of woodpecker. We have a lot of woodpeckers around here.
Yeah, it's just little holes in the tree.
Yeah.
So what do? They just suck the sap out of the tree.
Yeah, suck sap. Or if there's insects in the tree, you might get the regular woodpeckers going in for like insects as well. Yeah, it can harm the tree. I mean, fungus could get in that way and enter that way. But let me just paint the picture. You kind of see this is a lawn. It has this like interesting rim of horticultural varieties, but none of us, like Sonder, I don't think you, me, or Joey like lawns so much.
Not really, it's just more to maintain.
Yeah, so we're actually thinking of letting this lawn grow up a little bit and then maybe do some interplanting so we could have a low-lying meadow. And so we could have interesting, not just grasses, but interesting flowers as well, so it could become a place for pollinators. Because if you think about lawns, I mean, the US alone has around 40 million acres of lawns, and they're irrigated, they're often fertilized. There's a lot of energy to maintain them because you have to mow them constantly. And that's a lot of pollution as well, because a lot of those mowers are like gas mowers. So I just look at that as an opportunity to be able to turn it into something a little bit more interesting and have less maintenance.
Yeah, and it's better for insects, birds.
Yeah, we want to turn this into a place where it's more like about conservation is at the center, and like really stewarding this land So it's not just for us, but it's for also the animals and birds and bugs. And you can see we have a lot of birds feeders here already.
I wonder who is in charge of that. As an example, is that low meadow or is
No,
that's
high meadow.
High meadow.
That's
okay.
high meadow. And you know, and what I think would be nice is if the low meadow transitions into kind of a mid meadow into high meadow.
Right.
And you know, he planted some really beautiful trees out here. There's maples, there's cornus, there's some roses. I don't really care for those, but you know, it would be cool if this bush was a currant bush or something that like gave fruit. I think it would be more interest for us and for the animals. And then what I do love, I mean, the real kicker of this property is this pond. When we saw this pond, our jaws dropped. It's like a lake. It's about 2.5 acres. It's about 11 feet deep, we think. It's stocked with bass, grass carp, and a number of others. And we really love how it just kind of has this wild edge. And what we started to do, because we noticed it's around, is that the multiflora rose, which is this invasive hell plant, it has these massive thorns like shark teeth on it. It gets really beautiful flowers and berries that are of interest to some of the animals here, but it forms an impenetrable hedge. So we've been taking that out, and there's also invasive honeysuckle, and that's a little bit easier to take out, but we'd love to remove that from all these areas that we're going to be interacting with so that we could plant something that's a bit more native and a bit more of interest for the native wildlife here. Yeah. But in the meantime, love this grass. You could see that we had some asters and some goldenrods here, some bone set. There's lots of like really gorgeous, more like wet loving plants.
Yeah, there were a lot of purple flowers
Sedges.
here too that were popping in, and it worked really well with the fall colors. Do you know
Asters.
which? Oh,
yeah.
that was the aster.
Those are the asters, and they're great because there's very few plants that produce such vibrant flowers in the fall, and they are integral for late season pollinators. So asters and goldenrods, which we have a ton of. So that's gonna be great. And then there's this really big bushy area back here with some invasive plants and a bunch of old late season goldenrod. And this actually used to be raised beds. This is gonna be a big project for the spring, summer months. So we're gonna have to get in here, whack some weeds, take out this massive invasive honeysuckle, which let me show you because I want you to get a sense of what this looks like. You're pretty good now, Sandra, actually identifying this. So you can see this is like this thicket, and it still has some leaves on like this.
Yeah, and why is this not good? It just takes over. It's just too much.
It takes
just grows
over.
like crazy, I guess.
There's not much interest from the wildlife, and it's just a super spreader.
And how do you recognize it?
I think you could really recognize it now because the bark has this very old witchy broomy kind of look. It doesn't look pretty in the landscape, you know? There's some...
Yeah, I don't personally like it.
Yeah, there's some trees that look really beautiful bare in the landscape. I don't think this is one of them. But anyway, so this is gonna be a massive project unto itself, raised bed. So what I'd like to do here is have kind of this communal garden space for us, for, you know, in our future families. And then also have some trees that, like from fruit trees. So maybe some apples, some pears, maybe some berry bushes.
Yeah, and it gets a lot of light here too.
Yes, it does. And that will be perfect.
Sun comes up there, travels across the sky like that, and then sets over there. So it's a good place for a garden.
Yeah. And we won't take you through any of the structures today. It's all about the landscape. I do have to say that this is an area that he planted, and most of it I think he planted really well. You'll see that these red stems up here, speaking of plants that look great and when they lose leaves, this is
Oh, yeah, those are cool.
yeah, these are red twig dogwoods. You notice the older growth actually becomes brown, you could cut these right back. All the new stems will come up red. They're
When? In the spring?
Yeah, so new
So
growth.
we could cut them now.
Yeah, we could cut them now. New growth comes back red.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty exquisite.
And what about this old growth? Is that ever gonna come back or not?
Yeah, you could cut
This?
it down to the base.
Oh, okay.
And all the new twigs. See, these are all new twigs. You could tell that these are new because they're red.
Oh, I see.
You could see some here growing up.
What is this one with the red berries? Oh, there's actually a plant tag on here and a bird's nest.
Oh, look at that. These tags are all faded now, but you could tell that this was a garden center because I'm finding all these bird nests that have plant tags as part of the nest. I just think that's so precious. So this, I think, is ilex, which is a type of wintergreen. There's also some stuff called barberry that is invasive that he planted over there that we're going to have to eventually remove. This is teasel. Not something that you really want to
Yeah, it's spiky.
walk into, but it makes a nice dried flower. Then you see some more of this willow. And then over here, you can't tell what these are, but this is 9-bark. And I love that he planted these because it's a cultivar that has like black leaves and has really beautiful pale pink flowers that the pollinators love. And it is native to this area. So I like that. I mean, it's a cultivated variety, but like it is, 9-bark is native. And you can see the pollinators just are attracted to it. When we came here in the summer, they were just all over that tree or shrub. Then we have some deer damage here because you live in the country, you're gonna have deer damage, but we do have a 20-acre deer fence that surrounds this area, but there's some holes in the fence. So
it's broken.
That's another project that we have to do. You're gonna take the lead on that one, Sandra.
Yep, thanks.
This was the office.
Which I think you found a new purpose for.
I am going to turn this bad boy into a chicken coop. Now, this is not my ideal.
It's like the weirdest chicken coop.
This is not my ideal place for a chicken coop, but I mean, it's pretty rock solid. And we're not going to be building very much right away, and I'm going to get a new chicken. So I think this will be a nice little area.
You think this is enough space for one chicken?
I think this is great space.
You got electricity.
You got electricity. It has Wi-Fi. It's gonna be like totally blinged out, this chicken. Oh, this is what I was gonna point out. Another invasive plant that we're gonna have to remove. It's so unfortunate. I don't know why he planted all this. Burb golden carousel barberry. Yep. So this is one of the non-native invasive spreading plants that at one point maybe it was like fashionable to plant it, but here it's got like the red berries, but this one is more native right behind you. This is ilex.
Oh yeah, this one looks really cool.
Yeah, and this is winter, I guess they call it winter green, but it's like a holly. And this maintains the red berries even throughout winter, so it's really beautiful. That one we could keep. Now this area, this strip, I would love for us to kind of maintain this a little bit better and actually plant some really interesting tree varieties here that don't grow too tall. So maybe some Cercis canadensis, which is red bud. So it gets like beautiful pinkish purple red buds in the spring, and then it comes out with these really heart-shaped leaves, gets a really gorgeous crown as it ages. Maybe some weeping dogwoods, which would be in the genus Cornus, and then we could do some prunus, which is some cherry trees. You could get some really beautiful weeping cherry trees or regular cherry trees. And then so you can imagine this dotted with pinks and purples and whites as you're coming up the driveway. I can imagine it. I don't know if you can. So then we'd probably remove a lot of these trees. Much of them are ailing, and this was actually maintained as part of the nursery for a while. See, this is another example of just the deer being able to waltz right in.
They can open fences?
They can open fences.
Wow.
Hell plant right here, another red berry plant.
But this is the multiflora rose right here,
This is the
right?
multiflora rose.
Ay, ay, ay.
This is what we're going to be taking out
This
after
one
this
has
video.
pricked me a lot of times already.
I don't know if you could see this, but this is how awful the plant is. It's like literally stuck to my hair and my shirt. It's literally a plant from hell. Look at you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's gonna burn when you're in the water. We learned that we needed to get welding gloves in order to be able to take this bad boy out. So.
Oh, look at the bark on that.
Yeah, this.
That's what I mean.
It got you. So this area, I think we could open this up for the sunlight. And what I envision here is extending the deer fence out, because this is really the entrance to the forest. And we have really pretty much around 60 plus acres of forest here that go from like wetter bottomlands, so that we have like hemlocks and beeches, and it goes up through white pines that you see, which are like a lot of the first mover plants around here, up into some highlands, which is like hickory and oak. So we have both white and red oak. I'm sure we have some others, but from an initial walkthrough, that's what we have. So I can see like removing a lot of these trees, opening up the sun, planting this with shade garden plants. So I'm thinking Cornus canadensis, which are basically like small dogwoods on the ground. They just have these white bracts, and then maybe some bluebells. So they're bulbs, and then you can see blue and white carpets. That's what I'm envisioning. And then also we could plant some fruit trees here. So we could plant some pawpaws, which are a native kind of almost tropical fruit of the northern forests, and some other types of fruit trees. And then we could create like a little place for us to sit, maybe some chicken pecking and scratching back here. And we could have a fire bowl. It's a nice area.
Why are you thinking of moving these trees out again? I mean, obviously the sunlight will come through a lot more, but especially in the summer when these trees have a lot of leaves on them. But is there something wrong with these trees, or why would you take them out?
I would like to get a second opinion from a forester, but some of these trees are not looking the healthiest. I think some of them are actually ash trees. And we've gone through something called emerald ash borer here, which has basically and sadly killed a lot of the ash trees. So a lot of those trees have to be removed. But some of these are really quite young, and some of the trees that are popping up are like quaking aspens, and like aspens are the type of tree that are, again, first movers. They usually grow on the interstitials, and they spread by their underground stems, and they die within 20, 30 years, and they just topple over. So I think we could actually liven this place up a bit by selectively cutting some of this area, bringing in the sun, and managing this area. And then as we move in, it gets wilder and wilder, and then we don't have to manage that forest as much. We'll do some selective cutting and things like that, but only to improve the health and the quality of this forest. But we won't move all stumps. We might say, hey, we want to leave one because...
This one's cool for insects or birds to sit on or nest in.
We might find that some of them have a lot of holes, and that's like a skyscraper for animals. So we won't go too far in the forest, but you'll just be able to see that that gets a little wilder down there. And it really is a beautiful, walkable forest. I mean, we haven't explored every nook and cranny here, but we've explored quite a bit so far, and it's quite nice.
Oh, I was about to walk into this thing again.
So when we first saw this property, we came here in the summer months, and if you can imagine, this whole area down here was devoid of grass. It was essentially bald, a bald landscape filled with gravel, this stuff. Right? And it had some sedum and stuff growing in it. The place where there was a lot more gravel, there were hoop houses. But I envisioned, oh my God, this is amazing, bare landscape. Let us plant a meadow how we would like to see it planted. So like soft grasses. I imagined purple grasses and yellows and some parasitic flowers that grow on grass. Like, this is a really beautiful landscape. And as we came in a few months later, this has already grown up in like less than a season. It was goldenrods, it's Bermuda grass, it's a bunch of other grasses that I actually don't know. I have to really get up on my grasses. But there's beautiful native flowers, but it's not exactly how I would plant it. And how are we going to manage it? Because the whole concept of this landscape and what they engineered it for was removing the topsoil, laying down tile drainage, which is essentially, I'll show you what that is, piping that takes down the water and drains it. Because as I shared above with you before, this is not a well-draining landscape. So what they essentially created here was a landscape that would drain extremely well as they're watering all the plants on the landscape, and have 3 collection ponds that could then be used for irrigation. So what's amazing about this landscape is that it is for water collection. There's like, here we have like almost 7, 8, 9 acres of water collection right here,
Right.
with 3 interesting ponds that we could do some really interesting plantings around.
And just for context, there were container plants sitting on the soil here.
That's
there
right.
was nothing planted in this. It was
In the
more like a
ground,
garden
yeah.
center where you could come and pick a plant.
Managing for Meadow means mowing at least once a year, usually just once a year. And you're mowing it because you don't want it to turn to forest, because in this part of the world, your meadow will want to turn to forest. I mean, there's already some quaking aspens, some of that invasive honeysuckle kind of growing up in here. I actually chopped down about 14 quaking aspens, probably just one because they're all like the same clone. But what I love about this is, great, you know, it's already starting to turn to meadow. There's a seed bank here. Maybe this is something we could work with. Maybe we could do some test plots where we're planting some interesting plants. Maybe we're throwing some heavy mulch in certain areas and trying to build up some parts of the soil. Meadow doesn't need like really rich soil, but I'm struggling with the idea of like how we're going to manage this, because you saw the tile drainage sticking up. We started sticking up flags everywhere where there's problems that if you brought a tractor here, this would obviously trip up a tractor pretty readily. So we thought, oh my gosh, what if we bring sheep and goat into this meadow? But the forage is not necessarily...
Yeah, there's not much for them to eat here, huh?
Yeah, it's not very nutritious.
Yeah.
You know, goldenrod is not really nutritious, but we might get lucky and find somebody who would like to forage their sheep and goats here once a year.
Yeah, and I guess we're also open to suggestions in the comments. Like the whole reason why we're making videos like this is to also like collectively gather ideas and to turn this into something interesting. So yeah, if you have suggestions on what to do with something like this, please let us know.
We're learning as we go. It's a big learning curve.
Yeah.
To get this to a place that I think that we feel comfortable with and that it's beautiful, it's going to take a while. But I think we're kind of up for it.
Yeah, there's always something to
better
do
be.
here. There will always be something to do.
Yeah.
You're not alone doing it, so.
No, I'm happy that we're doing it all together, because, and then we could, you know, we could seek out help from the community as well. So, I mean, there's so many knowledgeable people here in this region. So I'm totally stoked to like get stuck in, dive in, ask questions, and yeah, I mean, so I hope to show you guys more when there's leaves on the trees and there's flowers and there's grass is green and everything along those lines. But we're in the middle of fall, approaching winter. We just had snow the other day. So unfortunately, there's not much to show you. But I hope you can imagine it and you'll follow the transformation of this property as we go. All right, guys. Love to know what you think. We'll see you later. All right, should we get to that multiflora massacre?
Yeah, we'll have to.